Hello and welcome to the Shack News Chattycast, the podcast that calls that joke the Aristocrats. I'm your host, Steve Watts.
I am your other host, Brian Carr. Steve, as always, the Chattycast brought to you and all our fine listeners by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/chattycast.
That's right, Brian. So every week here on the Chattycast, we pick a big topic, we post about it on the Shack News Chatty, and then we talk about it in detail, hence Chattycast. So today's guest, winner of last night's Most Inexplicable CEO Award, Asif Khan.
You know, I just like to thank God and Jesus and Steve Gibson and John Carmack and and Toru Iwata and Duke Nukem. Not forever.
Started to gradually turn the music up.
You're only thinking Duke Nukem
blinking
temporarily.
They're blinking at me. No, yeah, not Duke Nukem forever. Just Duke Nukem 3D.exe. But yeah.
So this week on the Chattycast, our big topic that we were going to be discussing is comedy in games. Why does it work in some games? Why doesn't it work in most games? But before we get to that, we're going to talk about what we are occupying ourselves with lately. And Asif, as our guest, you can kick us off. What have you been playing?
A couple of things I have NDAs on. So that's new for me.
Oh, yeah.
Which is cool. But besides that, I may have fallen out of love with Halo 5.
Oh, man. Just like Chattycast panelists are getting picked off one by one.
No, it's not. You know, it's. I haven't had time really, and it's just something I'm not making time for. Based on our last discussion, I think it was Mario Tennis was one of the topics that we had brought up. I went out and I bought Mario Golf 64 for Wii U. I've been playing that instead of Mario Tennis, and it was $4.99 on the eShop sale. So I thought that was a hell of a deal.
Not bad.
Still playing Hex FR VR, and every time I bring it up, you guys try to talk about WWE Supercard. But Hex FR VR is really good. It's like a Tetris-y style puzzle game in a hexagonal form with all these weird shapes. I'm spending a lot of time playing that. It's one of my mobile games of the year. I'm getting into. I'm going to start looking at some of these other games for Game of the Year this weekend. And I've been playing a lot of NCAA 2013. If you haven't noticed, I've been streaming that on the Chatty. I do these giveaways. It's called the Bizarro Wolverines, Brian. And basically, I have a dynasty I've been working on for. I think I'm in my 6th season now, and it's all these creative players, and they're all like built like brick, you know what. But it's been fun. I think my record this season was 166-0.
Wow.
In one game, so that was pretty fun.
I remember I saw the screen cap of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So it's like negative 200 sportsmanship or something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the negative 250 sportsmanship because
Yeah.
Every time I score, I'm like, what do we do? Go for 2. Why do we do it? Because we're dicks. But yeah, it's in years where I don't like Madden, I go back and I play NCAA 13 because, there's no longer that franchise. It's no longer refreshed every year. So what I decided to do when they announced that, instead of supporting them by buying 14, I just created a dynasty and I've been playing it ever since.
Nice.
A dynasty that just dunks on hapless.
It would be really nice if the real world Michigan Wolverines were up there. But
yeah, they just need Coach Earl Divix to come in there and start creating players that have 99 attributes for everything.
He's get the genetics lab to start making players for you.
Well, I mean, they're all freaks of nature too. They're like 6'7", 280, 100% muscle, and every single player is like interchangeable. Like they can play as kicker, they can be wide receiver, they can be quarterback, they can be linebacker. It's great.
So you got like a team full of Ivan Dragos is what you got.
Basically, this season, last season was the 2018 season, so I created a bunch of Shacker recruits. So this is their freshman year now in the 2019 season. So I know Mad Dog's mom is there. Evil Dolomite's a character. It's been good, and I've created a couple for the 2019 class of recruits. So I got Bad Kitty and Lord Amran, a couple of very prolific Twitch viewers and Shackers. So those are the games I've been playing. I'm gonna get back into Mario Maker because I'm starting to realize it's not gonna win Game of the Year, and it's making me sad.
It might. We don't know.
It's not.
Votes are still open.
Quit saying
I don't
that.
even know actually what's on top right now. I haven't tabulated anything because that's some work that can wait. Anyway.
That's what I've been playing.
So.
Uh-oh.
Nope. He froze.
Oh, no.
That's no good. I assume he's
So,
going to
Brian,
ask
what have
me.
you been playing?
Thank you, Asif. Well, I have been playing a couple things. Nothing super exciting or fresh to talk about. I finished the campaign for Black Ops 3. Suffice to say that it is a very good thing that multiplayer exists in that game, because the campaign is, like, I give them credit for trying to do like a William Gibson story instead of a Jerry Bruckheimer story, but it just doesn't come across well. There's all this like babbling about stuff that never really makes any sense. They introduce things that are never fully explained, and whatever. We finished it. It's done. But the multiplayer is still pretty good, so took advantage of that. But I have been playing recently. There's a couple other things. I've been dabbling with Lara Croft Go, which is a great mobile game. I would argue it is better than Hitman Go. I think because just the style of gameplay, I think, lends itself better to that sort of like puzzle solving and that sort of thing. And I also have been dabbling. I got it on Black Friday because I reviewed it last year and I was curious to see how it turned out. This year's version of WWE 2K16. I'm willing to entertain questions about it. I don't really know what to say.
Well, off the air, before we started, you sort of complained about the roster.
I
when
did.
I started to ask and then caught myself where I was like, I should just save it for the show.
Sure.
I don't know much about wrestling, so explain to a layperson.
Okay.
There's no Hulk Hogan, first of all.
How much selection
that's
is
one
there?
thing.
Like I thought that wrestling was like professional wrestling.
Mhm.
There's like a set fairly small number of people involved, right? Like.
Yeah, well, especially now for WWE, their main roster. Okay, so there's like two. There's like the minor leagues, which is NXT, and then there's the main roster. The minor leagues is really kind of a misnomer because it's a better show, like basically every week. But the main roster stuff, you have a relatively small number of people. I'm guessing like maybe if we're talking like the people who are like most involved in storylines, we're talking like maybe 30 people who really are like the main people on the show. Then a bunch of other people kind of float around when they need them. This game has apparently a roster of well over 100. The problem is that a lot of the choices they made for it are baffling. Like they still fall into that trap of having 3 or 4 different versions of the same person. They fall into the trap of picking like really obscure characters that really, like Colonel Mustafa, who nobody has thought about in probably a good 30 years. Then the biggest omission to me, and the reason why I did not buy this game when it came out, apart from all the other reasons, but the biggest reason I didn't is that they are doing a lot right now to try to kind of revitalize their women's division, like actually take it seriously and treat them like legitimate athletes, largely due to competition from the UFC and that sort of thing with Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm and all that. And the 4 women who just kind of are at the core of that and really made that happen are nowhere to be found in the game. Your Sasha Banks, your Charlotte, your Bayley, and Becky Lynch. They're 4 of the best people they have, male or female. They're nowhere to be found in the game for reasons that are completely.
It's not a licensing thing, right? Like they have access to everyone they want.
Like nobody knows why they're not in there.
Huh.
So are like the Bella Twins or Ava Marie in it?
Yep. And
I mean, Ava Marie's like their new flagship diva. So I think they're just. I think especially with divas, they push whoever's hot. You know, like back in the day, it was like the world was all revolving around Trish Stratus, and now like she's gone, and now it's like I feel like the shelf life of a woman pro wrestler is shorter for some reason.
It's
probably
like
because
the thing, right? Like you're 20 now.
Yeah, I think it's because they sexualize them way more than men. And
it's something that's kind of limited specifically to WWE. If you look at a lot of the indie circuits and that sort of thing, female wrestlers do very well, especially like in Japan. There's like a long history of female wrestlers who are still wrestling into their 50s and that sort of thing.
Yeah, big time. I mean, early on when it was wrestling, you had women that were going well into their 40s and 50s in America. And I think it's just really only when the TV deals got really big and the pay-per-views started that you really started to see the refresh cycle of the divas change.
Right.
It's like I think you can look back to, I mean, just look at they have their own show on E now.
And I think that's like a big part of why certain people were in this game. Like I don't know if it was like the company stepped in, because I know they have a significant amount of control over who gets on the roster as a licensing thing. And I wonder if like they wanted to push like, hey, these are the people on the reality show. The reality show is a big moneymaker for us because it draws in a lot of people that don't watch the regular product. And so I'm thinking that's probably what it was. But why not include these 4 women who are not only core to what you have done to try to make that division better, but also just legitimately some of the best people you have in the company, male or female. Like that's what kind of throws me off. And I would even like forgive like if you didn't include all of them, but the lack of Sasha Banks is incredibly disturbing because Sasha is incredible, like just top to bottom. And I'm trying to come across as like a creepy old man.
No, but I also,
really good.
No, I also think that when you're talking about people who are buying WWE 2K, these are rabid fans. They know everything about WWE, so they're gonna notice when like four wrestlers are missing out of 100. You know, so it's like
and they have like that's the thing they've noticed for sure.
And I feel like I don't know, 15 was not a very good game. It was kind of stripped down. This is like building on that, considerably. And I
wouldn't say considerably, but
they're trying to at least.
There does seem to be some features they added. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like at least there was some effort put into it.
Yeah.
But I still think that they're just the annual cycle of these games. It doesn't lend to them going all in with rosters.
No, it doesn't. And
next year they'll be like, oh, look who's in it this year.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like when the games come out, they're already out of date. Like they finalize rosters around WrestleMania, which happens in April. Well, April to October is an eternity in wrestling. Yeah. So guys come along, they've got completely different gimmicks, completely different looks, costumes, different music, all that stuff, and it's not reflected in the game. So I'm starting to wonder, like, wouldn't it make more sense to, instead of do this as an annual thing, release it as a platform, and then like maybe refresh it every couple of years, but in the meantime, do significant like content up, downloadable content up, a lot of like packs you can download of characters, character updates, that sort of thing.
It goes back to the same problem I run into with a lot of games with rosters in sports. NBA 2K, Madden especially. I would pay $100 a year to not have to buy a game every year, and I know it would cost more. But like, I know it would cost more. But if you're guaranteeing me that the roster support will be there, and that if I have virtual currency in a 2014 season, it's going to carry over to the 16 season. That's what NBA 2K really screws you over. It's like you invest all this money in a creative player, in 14. You can't bring him to 15 or 16. So then all that money you dump into that creative player or that My Career thing, it just evaporates every year. And which is great for them, but if you really want to do the community service, I think a subscription model for a WWE game, a Madden game, an NFL game, NHL.
I would subscribe just to have Kevin Owen in his right outfit. That's fine with me.
Little things like that where you could. I think it'd be better fan service, I would be willing to pay a premium for that. And I think gamers would in general, because once again, we're talking about rabid fan base. People who buy Madden are going to buy it. They may regret it this year because it's not very good. But
I'm so glad we had Asif on, because certain guests that we had on Brian would start talking about wrestling, and me and the other guests would be like, okay.
I'm always trying to tell you about wrestling, and you never pay attention.
I mean, I think the only other
I know. That's what you're talking about.
The proper substitute, or the person who's normally on the show, Ozzy, he could talk wrestling all day with you. So I'm a pretty good sub for Ozzy in that respect.
But if we had Andrew here, we'd just be nodding. And
I mean, whenever I talk sports games in Slack chat, it's just I can see everyone's eyes collectively roll, and it's like it's the same thing whenever you guys talk Hearthstone to me. I'm like, yeah, that's nice.
That's a little more arcane, I think.
Speaking of Hearthstone,
what have you been playing?
Hey,
we
what
get
have you
pretty
been playing?
specific about Hearthstone. All right. So anyway, what else have you been playing, Brian? Anything?
No. I'm good.
All right. Uh, I've been playing some Assassin's Creed Syndicate, but not enough to really have too heavy of an opinion on it. I will say I like Evie much better than Jacob.
Yeah,
She's just so much more stylish. It's just like
I
I just
have
want to
that on
play
my
through the entire
shelf.
game.
I want to play
Um,
it, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
it's good. I'm liking it. I didn't really get into Unity. Maybe just the setting. I was just like, I have no connection to this. I don't really know anything about this century in French culture.
Which is weird because you are like the biggest Les Mis fan I know that has not actually
That's
been
true.
in Les Mis. So, like, I was just kind of imagining you, like, I just want to, like, you're wearing the French flag draped around your shoulders
And
and
that was
singing
about a
a song of
completely
angry
different time
men.
in French history. Well, not a completely different, like a fairly
It's the same
similar.
time, isn't it? Like, it's all the French Revolution. How is it
No, it's
different?
the Les
You know,
Mis is about
I
the
don't
French,
care.
the
Just
French
go.
Revolution, not the French Revolution. It's two different things.
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
It's Hearthstone
uh,
or musicals with you, isn't it?
let's yeah. Don't make me start quoting "Can you hear the people sing?" Anyway, point is, I didn't really connect with Unity. Syndicate, you know, I just I recognize the area more, and I recognize the sort of cultural touchstones, and also it's not just broken as shit. Like that helps.
I'm
That
just
also helps.
I'm just intrigued by a game that lets you get mission orders from Karl Marx
Yes, there
and
is that. I
Charles
haven't run
Darwin.
into him
Like
yet, but I know that
that's the
exists.
stupidest thing I've ever
I've talked
heard,
to
but I'm into
Alexander
it.
Graham Bell like almost as soon as
Alexander
the game
Graham Bell.
starts. Yeah, he's there. There was
Really?
actually one time that it was broken. There was actually one time that the game broke on me in a pretty significant way because this was when I was in the tutorial, like just learning how to do missions. And there's a type of mission where you kidnap a person, like you sort of wrench their arm behind them and you shove them into a cart,
Mhm.
and then you have to get them to a waypoint. But once I got onto the cart to drive them to the waypoint, it wasn't showing me where the waypoint was. Like there was no pathing. There's supposed to be like a white path that you're supposed to go along, and it wasn't there. It just didn't exist. And I was like, well, where the fuck am I supposed to go? And I was like looking at the map, like trying to figure it out. And then I just like restarted the mission, and then the thing showed up, and I was like, oh, it just wasn't showing me like very vital information. But that's very minor compared to some of the bugs that people ran into in Unity, where faces just didn't have skin and such. Um, the other thing that I played quite a bit of for review was Pokemon Picross. I was trying to remember if it was Pokemon First or Picross. I think that is out today for free, so anyone listening to this could just already be playing it. It's not as if you really need to listen to me, but I already played a lot of it. And it's a Picross game with Pokemans. That's what it is. And it's free to start, which is Nintendo's word for it. Which means that they're very honest and forthcoming about the fact that, like, hey,
It's just like a jab at everyone that's in mobile gaming
yeah,
every time they
it
say it.
kind of is because, like, here's the thing. I think free-to-play games generally try to make it so that you can earn your way through. It would just be a lot of work. Um, Nintendo's free-to-start games, you could conceivably, if you did the daily, there's like a daily quest for like 10 little money units, but the gates are like in the triple digits pretty quickly. So for you to earn enough just doing the dailies, if you did a daily every day, the most you could earn is like 100 in a week and a half. So it would take you like months upon months upon months to get through the entire game. So Nintendo's like, look, let's just not pretend that anyone is going to do that and call it free to start and acknowledge that you are probably going to have to pay money unless you want to have like the slowest, most boring game experience ever. But the puzzles are well designed, and the way they use the Pokemon powers is kind of cool. It's kind of cool, but it's kind of a drawback. This is something I brought up in my review. It's almost like they punish you for making it harder for yourself, because you could be like a really hardcore Picross fan and be like, I'm not going to use any of the help tools, which is what the Pokemon powers are. They're just basically help tools. You're like, I'm not going to use any of the help tools, but if you don't, you fail the mission that's like, hey, in this stage you have to use this particular power. So it's kind of like you're getting rewarded with extra money for making the puzzle easier, which is like really counterintuitive to how puzzle games usually work. So if you're a hardcore Picross fan and you want to challenge yourself, it can be kind of frustrating having to use the dummy modes. But Whatever.
I have a quick story about free-to-play games. I was home for Thanksgiving, and my nephews are both obsessed with this Inside Out, by Disney.
Mhm.
There's a free-to-play game. Apparently, you have to buy jewels. That's the in-game currency, and they don't understand just how much money they're dropping on this. Like one of their cousins said he spent $200
Oh my God.
playing a free-to-play Disney game, and then my dad's he's old school dude. He's like, why are they giving them money just to play a game as free? And he's like, I tried to explain free to play to him. He's like, that doesn't make any sense. Why are they doing this? I'm like,
yeah, this is something that I have to compliment Nintendo on in their free to play moves in general, and in Pokemon Picross in particular, is after you reach a certain amount of currency purchase, they're just like, okay, well you've crossed this threshold. Now you just have infinite currency. Like you're never going to spend $200 on a Nintendo free-to-play game because you'll hit the threshold before that. The most efficient way to hit the threshold in Pokemon Picross costs about $30, which is really expensive for a Picross game. That's way more expensive than a Picross game, but it's also way less expensive than Infinity.
I think it was Game of War the kid spent $200 on.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. And that's why those guys can afford a Super Bowl ad. But it's just that's crazy to me that in a world where you can buy a AAA title for $60 and it's great and it has 100 hours of gameplay, something like Xenoblade. Why on earth would you pay $200 for a stupid mobile game? I don't know. I'm not gonna use the word. I'm not gonna use the word bubble, but bubble.
This is something I brought up in my review, and I'll just mention this real quick because we have to move on. But I saw some reviews, not to criticize other reviews because whatever, opinions are subjective. But you see some reviews for free-to-play games like Nintendo's games, and they're like, oh, the only drawback is that you got to pay something eventually, and it's like, well, yeah, it's like my attitude is like, well, of course you have to eventually. That's the whole point. They want to make you. They want to get some money off of you, and it might be a little bit, it might be a lot, whatever. But that's, of course they do. They developed the game. You have to give them something.
And say at that point,
if you're enjoying it,
then we should have a negative mark on every review saying, "Hey, you have to pay $60 to play this."
Yeah, it's kind of a weird,
you have to
ridiculous
pay money to buy this thing
that we hold free-to-play games to, where it's like, oh man, eventually you're gonna have to pay for this free-to-play game, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you have to give the developer something. If you're enjoying it enough that you want to play it long term, then yeah, go ahead. You should be paying them something. But I think Nintendo games, by setting that threshold, it's a little more of a consumer-friendly version. So in my review, I was like, well, it's expensive, but it's also more consumer-friendly in that there's an end point. You reach a certain point, and Nintendo's like, okay, well, you've basically bought the game now. Do whatever you want, And they even do that with the energy mechanic in this one, where after you upgrade your energy meter, I think 3 times, which costs probably a total of 500 of the in-game currency. If you upgrade it 3 times, they're just like, all right, you got infinite energy. You don't have to wait for the cooldown timer anymore. You just got it.
Nice.
So yeah, they come up with little ways to make it a little more consumer friendly.
I don't know what's worse though. I remember when the App Store launched, you had Monkey Ball and it was $10, but that was it. $10, you had Monkey Ball the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Or these games that can nickel and dime you to spending for instance, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. I had to look at my phone real quick to figure out what it was. I started playing it, and it's a mindless. It's it could be my new WWE Supercard, but there are so many gates. There's so many things to collect, and all these different microtransactions. I was like, screw this.
As somebody who is regularly dropping $20 on Hearthstone per month, I understand.
No, and you know what? I get it too. I'm not damning all of them. I'm just saying you better get something for it. And in the case of games with cards and card packs, I get it. That makes
you're
a lot of
extending
sense.
your play. You're making it enjoyable for another month or whatever.
But putting up a gate that says you can't play unless you have this stupid currency, that to me is a little more off-putting than Hearthstone saying, here's some new packs and it costs this much. I think that enhances the game. It's more akin to DLC than saying, oh, sorry, Steve, you played Hearthstone 5 times in the last hour. You have to wait an hour, or yes. You know what I mean? Oh my
God!
Could you imagine if they did that?
Exactly.
Exactly. So I think that's the difference. Is that I'm not damning all free to play. I'm just saying that some of them are really evil, especially with how they get kids addicted to their game and then
Yeah, it is.
like
I feel like there's probably something here like you could examine very closely, like the way these things are modeled after like casino games,
Yeah.
mhm.
and then they're like, oh, you gotta pay. But that's a topic for another day. Let's move on.
Sorry, tangent already. You know me.
Yeah, really. We're trying to keep it to a tight time period because the professor among us has obligations.
I
So
gotta
anyway,
go offer my professional opinion on things.
let us all talk about comedy in games. When has it been done well? What makes a good comedy game, and why is it so hard to get right? I want to sort of kick off the topic by reading in absentia. Ozzy Mejia, our usual third chair, left a comment on the Shack News Chattycast thread. He says, for whatever reason, humorless action seems to be falsely equated to maturity. Things have to be gritty, emo, and gray because in many instances, comedy is considered to be for younger audiences. There are a couple of franchises that get it right. Borderlands revels in a world filled with guns, but also packs a lot of humor and levity to balance out its violence and darker moments. Gearbox seems to have grasped the idea of comedy in games, which is why it's still a shame you couldn't leave this alone, that they fell on its face with Duke Nukem Forever. So the idea that the reason we see so little comedy in games is that it's considered kiddie, you know? What do you guys think of that perspective?
I disagree completely. A perfect example of why Ozzy's wrong here is Grand Theft Auto. I'm just saying,
See,
GTA.
I don't think he's saying there's no exceptions. He's just saying, like,
No,
this is why the
no,
industry trend...
No, I
sort
get it. No, but like you look at GTA, such a dark game. You know.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert from 2 years ago. You're torturing someone in a basement, right? And then you get in the car and you listen to that radio, and it's hilarious. There's like, the talk radio in GTA is my answer to a lot of this, where you can be adult oriented and funny in games. It's just that so often it's like tone deaf, and I think the other issue that is going on with comedy not really being successful in games is that good comedy is so dependent on improvisation, and that's really hard to program. Something that feels improvised, and that's where, like I said, GTA did a really good job of that. I know that they're gonna bring up Double Fine and Tim Schafer, but
yeah,
all of their games do a really good job of, even though it's pre-programmed, it makes it feel like it's almost improvised or something that would have happened naturally. Right. I think that's the challenge.
I think on that subject, there's lots of things when you watch a comedy movie or a TV show that's funny. There's lots of little things that actors do with their faces that can't be done in games, really, or at least maybe now they can with the level of animation tech we're getting now. But like, how many times have we been watching like Parks and Rec, and the camera pans over to a character who's just giving like a face, and it's like a very minor thing.
It's the Jim Halpert.
That's the joke, is that like they're making a certain face, they're reacting a certain way. Games, by nature of the sort of static faces and not having high enough animation quality, really has to depend on writing, which is so dependent on timing.
Yeah, and that was going to be my point, is I was going to do the whole, hey Steve, what's the secret of comedy?
Timing.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
you're welcome.
It doesn't work, but I can never make that joke work because somebody always says it before I'm ready to say it. Anyway, but yeah, timing is so video games are kind of by their nature a thing where you as a player have agency about how quickly or slowly things progress, right? Even if you're kind of funneled down a corridor in a shooter or something like that, what your choice to go forward, go back, that sort of thing, messes with the way that time is represented in the game. So because I might decide to take a long time to get from this point of a joke to that point of a joke, or this scene to that scene, the timing of the game is all whacked out, right? I might see something too soon or too long after the original setup for it to really have an effect. So we can do comedy in cutscenes, I think, fairly well, or pre-recorded things like GTA radio stations. But comedy in gameplay itself is still very, very difficult.
It's extremely difficult, and I've got a counterfactual to that I don't think you disagree with, but to point out, like, a lot of the examples that people are bringing up, Grim Fandango, Day of the Tentacle, one person said Rock of Ages, I think he meant Brutal Legend. Rock of Ages is that Tom Cruise musical?
No, Rock of Ages is the game. You got a giant boulder, you're rolling it down.
Oh, okay. All right.
I know what he was talking about.
I was thinking he was referring to Brutal Legend, but all right. And Secret of Monkey Island, all of these are games that are like rely on the Scum games in general, are games that rely on the writing, and those are basically like cutscenes. That was before cutscenes was really a thing, but those are basically cutscenes. My only counterfactual for things being funny during gameplay, and we can try to wrap our heads around why this is the Portal series, which it's mainly just like a voice in your ear while you're doing other things, and that's also one of the only games that made me laugh more than like, huh, you know, like.
What's that?
Like most games, you get like a single chuckle, and that's like as much as you ever get.
I'm blanking on this robot. It's from the BioWare. It's a Star Wars game. It's either Knights of the Old Republic or the Old Republic.
HK-47.
Yes, he's hilarious.
Yeah, he is.
And it's like, and it's. I don't know if it's not necessarily the timing. It's just he's just constantly, bitterly, sarcastically nailing you about being a meatbag and being stupid and hating you, basically. And Portal's very similar. I think it's like almost an entire undertone of just making fun of itself or you. Yeah, it's very challenging to do in games consistently. I think we're leaving out one game, and this is left out on our top 100 games too. Leisure Suit Larry. That's a game where your actions themselves were pretty damn funny, especially when you're an adolescent that got to play that game.
Yeah, I mean that was it was partly because that was basically like a living cartoon, you know. The animations were a lot more detailed than a lot of games that we saw. Yeah, that's my impression. That it was amusing for that reason, that you had like these sort of over the top animations and character design.
Yeah, I think it also sometimes. Funny things just happen in games that aren't really intentional. Like you look at going back to Bethesda, you look at like Skyrim and how many funny things happen through the mod community, or just like people contriving some crazy thing like I don't know, just Google Skyrim funny and you'll see like hours of YouTube videos where it's like the game itself didn't create that kind of humor, but the community was able to.
Yeah.
The brokenness of the game.
Well, the idea of like games and mods acting as the actual medium in which comedy is created, I think there's a lot of fertile ground there. Look at like a lot of machinima, like Red versus Blue and that sort of thing. That was absolutely using a game, but they still had to like kind of cut it and edit it and actually provide like a very specific linear flow to what was happening to create the comedy, right? Like if you're assigning control to a player, you are essentially hoping that they will play the game in roughly the order and at roughly the pace you want them to for the jokes to land. So it's still kind of challenging when we talk about comedy. So I don't know if like that's part of why they don't do it, but yeah, I think going back to the point about writing, that does make a huge difference, because you can make a game that is technically not a comedy game, but through the writing, make it funny. So you don't necessarily... And I think, too, like, the trick is also trying to make something that fits with what you're asking the player to do. So a good example of this, I think, is Bulletstorm. Bulletstorm is a fantastic game, and the fact that people did not latch onto it is still one of the greatest travesties of justice that I think the video game community is guilty of. And if you didn't ever buy Storm, that's on you. Okay?
You're a garbage person, and we hate you.
You did bad. But that game has just completely ridiculous, stupid dialogue, over-the-top characters, lots of funny moments, just them saying stuff that's just completely bonkers. But the game itself goes for that kind of same over-the-top wackiness, silliness, by encouraging you to find these creative ways to kill enemies and that sort of thing. So...
And I feel like when they do something like that, or Saints Row 3 is kind of a similar. When games do go for that style of comedy, there's so many. There's such a reaction from I think the critical community and even some of the fan community, where they say like, "Oh, this is so stupid. This is so dumb," and it's like, no, you need to be smart to intentionally be that dumb. Like, they're not just idiots. They know what they were doing. They made this stupid in a specific way on purpose because it's funny.
I view Bulletstorm as like the spiritual successor to Duke 3D, and Duke 3D was really good about being dumb in a really, funny in a really dumb way. Like it was crass, like there's that, when you go in that one bathroom and there's the Doom Marines in there, and he's like, that's one Doom Space Marine. Like, his one-liners are funny, and it's like the way that they triggered them, going back to timing, was actually really masterfully done. It was super cheesy. Everything in that game was said with a wink, but they did a really good job of being funny and fun at the same time. I don't know, like, it's really difficult in games because if you do it wrong, it sounds really repetitive and dumb. And I think that's the problem.
That's the worst. When there's a joke that gets repeated in a game.
Oh yeah.
When the script just doesn't know to not repeat, and you're just like, oh no.
It's like it's like an NPC that just keeps saying the same joke throughout the whole game. Like, you're like, okay, that's not funny.
You're like, it wasn't very funny the first time.
Yeah. So I think that's the key, and that goes back to like trying to mimic improvisation, even though you really can't. Yeah. I think, we're talking about facial things. Though. It's really the Jim Halpert, in The Office. You need that cut to Jim.
Yeah, to bring back what Brian was saying about the community sort of using games to create comedy, that even if they're not inherently comedic, I think that's part of what's been the explosion of YouTube streaming personalities and Twitch streaming personalities. Like most of the most popular ones are the ones who have these crazy over-the-top characters that they play, and they're reacting to games in crazy ways, and like that's funny to watch. You're not watching it because you're like, oh, I want to see what this guy thinks of this game. Like that's not most of them. It's the I just got killed in this like crazy way, or I just got scared and I'm reacting in a very over-the-top way, and you're watching their faces because that is more comedic inherently than anything you imitate through games.
You look at some of the Giant Bomb streams that they've done, where they're having fun doing funny things. There's like this one railroad simulator that they did a stream of. It's still one of the funniest things I've ever seen them do. Where like they break games, and it's like breaking games are funnier than actually playing them sometimes. I feel like Well,
I think that hits on something interesting. Like if you give the player the freedom to do something, right, and then have that tied into the joke, I think because we have to kind of get away from this idea that if we're going to have games, I don't think we can still write them and think about them and perform them the same way we do with film, right? They're a unique medium. We need to be able to use that sort of control that players have. So I'm thinking of stuff like in Metal Gear, for example, okay, where you actually get rewarded with comedy for messing with the systems of the game. So, like in the first game, if you hit Meryl and you're in the wolf cave, she'll whistle for one of the wolves. It'll come over and pee on you. Okay, that's not like high art. That's not highbrow comedy, but it is a funny reward or a funny result of doing something in the game. They do that a lot in the Metal Gear games. Putting like I'm going to put this sexy lady poster on my cardboard box, and then I'm going to see what happens. Oh, this guard came over and just like got hearts in his eyes and is all like gushing.
And he's just staring at it. Yeah. That's
so
kind of similar to the old Zelda.
Hitting the chicken.
Hit the chicken enough times and you get it just murdered by chickens. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
You're so right, man. When Brian said that was the first thing that came to my mind was Link to the Past, beating up some chickens, and then suddenly all of them are chasing you across the screen.
By far the best part of any Zelda game.
It's just abusing chickens.
And then just getting punished right to sleep.
It was Nintendo's way of saying, like, hey, be nice to chickens. Don't slash at them with your sword.
Another game that I from Nintendo I kind of have to mention is remotely funny is Animal Crossing with their dialogue at times. Like, cause that game is so repetitive, and
you need something to keep it fresh.
And the dialogue in that game is actually pretty good. They say some funny things, and
actually, a lot of the Nintendo handheld stuff, the sort of quirky handheld stuff they've been doing, I think it's probably because they've been using really good translators. Like their Treehouse team has gotten really great in recent years of localizing instead of just translating.
Well, they've really empowered that team. In the last 5 years, I think if you look at Super Mario Maker, what they're doing with the Treehouse levels that are hitting the whatever the hell you call it, the metaverse.
The game of the year. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's not the game. I was talking about it on my stream last night. I think I might vote for Rocket League to give Rocket League a chance. Because
I think Rocket League gets a pretty good shot. There's some people who love themselves in Rocket League. Anyway.
I want to propose one more thing, before, as long as we're talking about timing and all that, is that, and we don't normally think about this, but I would say that comedy in games is on some level tied to processing power. So hear me out for a second. Let's say you play a game like Saints Row, right? And Saints Row gets a lot of its comedy from pop culture references, like, for example, a particular music cue hitting at exactly the right moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're playing on PC or on an underpowered console or something like that, and because the console's trying to do so many things, load the next level, move the game forward, load up the audio cue, all this stuff, on slower systems, it might actually end up ruining the joke by having this thing try to load at a different. I'm not really sure how to phrase what I'm talking about, but
cues up wrong.
Yeah, or it cues up wrong, or like there's like a moment of hesitation and the cue happens before you're actually ready for it, or something like that. So I think that the other thing we have to look at, if you really want to do a comedy game, you have to make sure that the experience of the player is not going to be overly changed by the result of what they're playing it on, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's why I think to do really effective comedy, you have to tie it to player agency sometimes, rather than just these are scripted moments that are going to hit at this moment.
And I think you just have Cranky Kong.
Yeah,
right.
That too. But along those lines, I think that it's important, and I just have one more example to bring up that I just remembered. I want to make sure I mention it. Along those lines, it's important to have the comedy, if it's relying on timing and hitting a musical cue at the right time, for example, it's important to have it appear in a section that's kind of hard to fail. Because the first time you fail out and restart, hear it kick up again, you're like, okay, yeah, like it's not as fun, Yeah. And at that point, you almost kind of resent the joke.
Yeah. Well, because like playing Saints Row 4, right? That last part where you've got the mecha, not the mecha suit, but it's like this like cyber war suit thing, and you're going to fight Zinyak, and it starts playing The Touch from the Transformers movie. The first time I heard it, laughed my head off. When I died, doing it again and again, it became less funny each time.
Yeah.
So
until you're just like, fuck you, Transformers.
Yeah, because video games have to allow us the chance to reload things and try things again.
Yeah.
The jokes usually only work the first time you hear them, the first time you see them.
Especially like within the span of 5 minutes, like
yeah. So
imagine if like on a sitcom it just rewound a couple seconds and then played the joke again, and you'd be like.
And again, it's all about the control of the flow of time and how we perceive it. And in film and media, like outside of games, that's really, really easy. In games, it's a lot harder because of that question of control and fail states and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we have to move on.
One last thing about GTA. Trevor. Just Trevor. That's all I have to say. GTA 5, Trevor. Hilarious.
I need to bring up one more example before we move on. But I don't know if any of you have finished Lego City Undercover.
I haven't finished it, but I know how it ends.
That game was hilarious.
That game is so good.
And one of my favorite gags of that year or any year was at the very end of that game. And so spoilers for this, I guess, like 3 or 4 year old game. At the end, you're like in space, like it goes to space, and you're stopping this like evil industrialist, whatever. And then like the spaceship is crashing to Earth, and they have this full on like one-winged angel from Final Fantasy VII style like Latin operatic song play where the lyrics are like Legos, and it was awesome and hilarious. And it took me a while. It was one of those like, is that really what I'm hearing? Kind of gags where like you kind of like lean in. And you're like, is that what they're saying? Because that's that's kind of funny.
That game was so funny, so fun.
It was really, really good. They need to make another one, but instead they're making a billion licensed ones.
We 100% of that game, and when you do that, that means we collected everything. And you get to be a very large Lego man, and you get to fly around with you.
Oh, that's awesome.
A little story, just real quick. We got to 99%, and my nephew deleted our save file.
Oh no!
Oh god!
Yeah. This was back when they were like 5 and 3, and they're just like, I want to play. Delete. I'm like, oh god. We had spent. My brother and I spent half a year trying to collect everything. But okay, moving on. Do you have something to tell us about Audible or something?
Yes, Asif, I will. Audible is offering you, the listeners of the Shack News Chattycast, a free audiobook as well as a free 30-day trial to check out their service. Tons of great books on games, tech, hundreds of other topics to choose from. Every week we're going to highlight one that we've personally enjoyed. We think you might too. This week, since we're talking about comedy, I'm recommending Bossy Pants, written and read by Tina Fey. Tina talks about her journey from childhood to her professional career as one of the funniest women in the world. Check it out, or check out any of over 150,000 other books with your free audiobook download. All you gotta do, audibletrial.com/chattycast. That's right, audibletrial.com/chattycast.
All right, so we're moving on to newsy
It's
bits.
pretty funny.
These are going to have to be some pretty quick newsy bits, which is in some ways a little unfortunate because the Game Awards were last night. So we're going to do the quick hit reaction style of newsy bits where you have 1 sentence to respond to everything. And then when we get to the end, I'll save the biggest one for the end so we can talk about it in more detail depending on how much time there is. So, all right, one sentence to describe your reactions. Rock Band VR, kind of like Guitar Hero. Brian, go.
My reaction was basically Guitar Hero Live already did it, but, whatever.
Awesome.
It's a really big get for Oculus, but I don't care at all.
All right. Psychonauts 2 was finally announced. Speaking of which, that's actually an example that, let's see, Guy Brushed, very fitting name, brought up as one of his favorite examples of a funny game. Psychonauts 2 was announced, and it's being crowdfunded because Double Fine loves them some crowdfunding. Asif, you go first on this one.
Good for them. I'm happy that they keep making money off of people not getting any equity.
I think this one is Fig, so technically I think you could get equity. I may be wrong. I haven't looked into it that deeply. But Brian, your thoughts?
I hope they re-release the first one too, because I didn't play it. So
Yeah, I'm sure
I would like
will.
to.
I will bet you.
And Brutal Legend while you're at it. I'd like to replay Brutal Legend. I didn't get to finish it.
Let's give it like in 10 years they'll do a Brutal Legend Kickstarter.
I need to play Broken Age still, by the way.
Did I say Kickstarter? Because I meant crowdfunding. Anyway, so Telltale Games is doing Batman. Brian, our premier Batmanologist.
You killed Batman's parents. Batman will remember that.
Awesome.
I'm just waiting for another Batman trilogy to come out.
All right. That might be what this is. Who knows?
I was going to say, I have a ton of stuff on that one, but I'll just leave it at that.
And of course, the biggest news of the night, the thing that we kind of have to talk about, Shaq Fu, a Legend Reborn. As Shaq News, this is our primary focus, is covering Shaq and Shaq-related events. He was a gigantic, gigantic man on that stage. Brian, Shaq Fu.
Hey, watch your mouth.
Awesome.
That game was really bad, so I hope they've figured out how to make it not as bad. But good for Shaq News.
It doesn't look like it.
If it's any indicator of Shaq News' future, Shaq Fu predated Shaq News and led to a golden age of Shaq News, and I'm sure this will as well.
In all honesty, though, I want to play this. It looks like garbage, but
Yeah.
it looks like it could be entertaining garbage.
It looks like funny
no.
garbage. Yeah. Exactly.
And the real question is, does this come with the Shaq Fu rap album sequel?
Oh God, I hope so.
Because
Just so you
that.
guys know, I was kidding about that being the big news.
Oh.
The actual biggest news of the night that we actually do have to talk about. I feel like it would be insane if we didn't address this. In the middle of the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley sort of took a pause to this very tightly coordinated show and basically publicly shamed Konami for having lawyers prevent Hideo Kojima from coming to attend and claim his reward or his award for Metal Gear Solid 5. He devoted a pretty good chunk of speech to it, and basically told the crowd hey, everybody, cheer for Kojima. It was pretty unorthodox. It's something we do not usually see at award shows. But I feel like we have to address this because this was kind of the big crazy bombshell of the night. That this sort of played into the latest bit of drama between Hideo Kojima and Konami. Asif, I've seen you commenting in the room, so I'll let you go first. What do you think about this?
I think Konami's really in a bad state of affairs financially, and I think that the fact that they're not letting him out of his contract and they're just going to sit on him is really a tragedy because he's one of the most brilliant people in gaming, and he's being sat down in a basement, basically locked up. To not allow him to accept an award is just disgusting because they're sitting there
petty at that point, right? What is the point exactly?
They're making millions of dollars off of his hard work, off of decades of his hard work, and he's been nothing but loyal to them. And there's no indication that he's the problem here. It's the company. And you look at everything they've done on their end, it's like they're exiting games altogether. if you're exiting games, if you're really only going to make like 1 or 2 games every few years, why don't you let him go work for a company that'll empower him? I think he'd be great at Nintendo for one.
And also, like, who cares if he's there to claim an award? Like, how could that possibly be bad for you?
Yeah. Like, oh no, you're actually. It's like they're like, okay, what would get us goodwill? Oh, let's do the opposite. You know,
I've been careful to say, you know, like I'm not damning the company as a whole because I think that it's sad to say like fuck Konami as a whole because like there's people on the development side that have been doing continuing support for Metal Gear Solid 5 and things like that who they care, like I'm sure they care a lot about the products they're putting out, but it seems like on a corporate level, on a leadership level, Konami just like does not give a fuck about gamers, like or games in general. It's just like nope, don't care. Don't even want to be involved in that world.
It makes me think there's something operationally really wrong with the company, and that the only way to get Kojima out is for someone to acquire the whole damn thing, and that's a sad state of affairs. It's really, out of everything that happened last night, that was the thing that got a rise out of me because you shouldn't treat someone like a legend like that. Can you imagine Nintendo treating Miyamoto like that?
Yeah, it would be insane. It would be insane. Brian, I know we're running short on time, and I want to get your thoughts too. Kojima.
My thoughts basically are there is no excuse to not have him there. I think Keighley calling Konami out has been called unprofessional. I fully disagree. I think that you had to explain his absence because he was conspicuous by his absence.
Like Jack Bauer accepted the award for it.
Yeah, and Jack Bauer doesn't care. He doesn't want to be there. So, you know, this game deserves some recognition. It deserves some attention. You don't want to have, like, you know, this half-hearted actor up there accepting the reward for the game that he sort of did dialogue for. You know, you want to at least acknowledge, like, hey, look, we know who you wanted to see. There's a reason he's not here. The actual creative
visionary behind this isn't here, and there's a reason.
And given that Keighley and Kojima have a long history together, it's not surprising that he probably took this kind of personally and wanted to make it clear, like, look, this is the situation, guys. If you want to be upset, this is who you need to be upset.
Said that, like, I don't understand this, but that's the situation we're in. Like, he basically like said that flat out, and I feel
he
like
said it in the nicest way possible. Like, he threw him under the bus.
It was completely like
professional,
delivered in a calm and moderate manner. But it was also like you could tell he was frustrated, and it was one of 2 moments in the show. And we're going to mention the other one very quickly, but it was one of 2 moments in the show where amid all this spectacle and advertisement, that you saw like human emotion, where like this guy is frustrated and upset on a personal level and a professional level that one, his friend, who he's been sort of in a working relationship for a long time, and 2, this sort of visionary game designer isn't here to claim an award that is rightfully his.
Exactly.
So that there was like real human emotion there. The other moment of human emotion was this really extended, like, touching tribute to Iwata, and I just want to say real quick, everyone kind of makes jokes about Reggie, and it's not unwarranted. He's a ridiculous person, and he knows it, and he plays up that persona, But his little speech for Iwata was really poignant and sweet, and like, I feel like there's a lot of platitudes you could sort of spout when giving a speech like that, and say like, oh, he was a very kind person, he was a blah blah blah. Reggie's speech was basically like, Iwata got stuff done, and he affected the gaming industry and the company in some really great ways because he had this work ethic. Like, those are very specific things about Iwata that aren't just like platitudes.
Yeah, and I think
it was a really great moment.
It really came across as a man who was talking about his friend, and I think that's the biggest thing that made the difference. Like, this was not just some canned PR thing. This was Reggie getting up there, writing and talking about somebody who he deeply cared about, which I thought you could really tell. And so it's what a shame. It's just so sad.
Rough. It's rough. Nintendo, the whole company, the fan base, everyone is still in a grieving process right now, and including myself. And that last night definitely hit me.
And I feel like that was just one of those moments where you saw a piece of the Game Awards where it's like, oh, this is showing like genuine like love and affection for the industry in a way that it never did when it was on Spike TV, But
yeah, Jeff Keighley really gained a lot of my respect with how he handled the whole awards last night, but especially the Kojima and the Iwata segments.
Same here.
He's a pro, but he really showed it last night.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to rush through this, but fortunately it's a pretty quick game. It's time for Beat the Duck.
I'm wearing my brown shirt.
I don't have my Lions shirt, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm just waiting for you to throw that last-minute Hail Mary and.
Today's game.
I'm gonna kick a field goal. You're gonna block it. You're gonna run it into the end zone and fumble it.
Yep.
On the
Today's
one.
game is another exciting edition of Lost in Translation. I'm going to take the title of a game well known for its comedy and run it through a few layers of Google Translate and then spit it back out into what passes for a form of English. You have to figure out what the original game is. I will warn you that some of these, by the time it got put back into English, some of the words were no longer English. So we'll start off a little easy, Asif. This is actually extremely easy. This is the easiest one. South, Rod Truth.
What?
South, Rod Truth. Oh no! Oh my God! This is gonna be real messy if you can't get this one.
South Rod Truth?
Yes,
South,
This is gibberish, Steve.
So the subtitle is Rod Truth.
Rod Truth.
Okay. I know the answer, but...
Yeah, I figured you both would. All right.
I have no idea what you're talking about. It's so gibberish.
It is South Park: The Stick of Truth. Sorry about that. This is gonna be a real messy game.
God, this is... Ugh.
Brian.
Yeah.
This is one that has a word that is not English. Vlaneridae. Vlaneridae.
Portal? I don't know.
No, actually I tried to do Portal and it just became ports, and I was like, well, that's too easy.
That sounds like an STD. Vlaneridae?
Vlaneridae is Day of the Tentacle. Apparently somewhere tentacle got lost.
Oh, so it's 2 words. Okay.
Yes.
Vlaneridae sounds like something you need antibiotics
It does. It does.
How is your Vlaneridae acting there, Asif? You doing okay?
Oh, man, it burns.
Got these itchy sores. All right. Awesome.
Gross.
3 Saints series. This is actually probably my favorite one. 3 Saints series.
Saints Row?
Saints Row the Third specifically, but I'll give it to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But Saints series being Saints Row, I like that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that one.
All right, Brian. This one you might be able to get. Palace Obsessed.
Palace Obsessed. Castle Crashers?
These are so terrible. No, that was Maniac Mansion.
Oh, okay, I get
Palace
it.
Obsessed. Obsessed
All
is
right.
apparently some foreign word for maniac. Anyway, this last one would normally be the tiebreaker. I think Asif is just winning anyway, but it's
Yeah.
also kind of impossible. So let's see.
So if we get it, do we get 2 points?
Sure,
So
yeah.
let Brian have a shot.
Why
at
not?
it, 'cause I have the lead. I have the lead. No, give him 1 point, but he gets to have a shot at
Or
it.
the tie. Or
Yeah.
the
All right.
Because this one is impossible and you're not going to get it. Goal Oluya.
Goal Aluya.
Yes. And I will say this is, how can I phrase this in a way that won't give it away? This is 2 words because I had to split it up or else it wouldn't have recognized like an ability to translate it.
Goal Aluya.
Yep.
Borderlands? I don't know.
No, I'm sorry. It is Bullet Storm.
Oh, come on!
Bullet Storm. Apparently, bullet translated in some language to target, which translated in some other language to goal. I don't know how the Oluya came. But,
And I'm a Bulletstorm evangelist, and I didn't get it.
I know.
Sad.
but
This is all gibberish, Brian. It's like
nothing like nothing.
I know, but it still hurts. It still hurts, Asif.
it's like Mad Libs or something. I don't know.
Like insane
I forgot how
libs.
hard that game is. Anyway, yeah, Bulletstorm is
I
a glorious game.
I
Never
beat
games
the
played.
Lions.
You beat it. You
Yes.
beat the Doc.
No one really wins when Brian and I are playing.
No. You
No
just
matter
sort of
who
like we're
wins,
both
we
awkwardly
lose.
flailing around, and then one of us might sort of tip over.
I did it. Saints Row.
Remember when Bulletstorm had a self-aware moment where the female lead said, "I will kill your dick," and
Mhm.
the male lead said, "What does that even mean?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite jokes.
And not just the male lead, Stephen Bloom, aka Spike Spiegel, in his Spike Spiegel voice. Even better.
Yeah,
That's
it was
quality.
what? What does that even one
Yeah.
It was one of the few moments where that game peeked through and was like, "Hey guys, we
This is
know
stupid.
what we're
We know
doing."
it's stupid.
All right, so that is the show. We're gonna get out of here. Brian has to run and talk about Miss Marvel.
I do want to do one quick plug, if I may.
Yes,
Yes.
you may. I was about to leave
This
you there.
Saturday, my students in the video game class I'm teaching are putting on a charity event to raise money for Extra Life. That's right, a month after everybody else. We are doing some tournaments and stuff like that on campus, but we are raising money. If you do want to contribute, if you still want to help out some sick kids in Wisconsin, that'd be wonderful. We'd really appreciate your help. The easiest way to do it is if you go to my Twitter page, which is Learnonaut. That's LearNonaut. Learnonaut, and I've got that pinned, the donation page pinned to the top of the page. Click on that. We'd love to get any support you can. Every little bit helps. But they've been working hard on putting this together. I'm really excited to see how it all turns out, and we will be streaming it live. I will probably post some stuff on that Twitter page, and also I might put some pages up on Chatty to kind of let people see what we're doing. So
Let me ask
keep
you
an eye
this:
out for that.
if we have listeners in the area, are they allowed to attend the event?
Yeah. Just don't
All
be like creepy or murderers or anything, and you're good to
Well,
go.
they are Shack News Chattycast listeners.
I guess that ship has sailed.
That might be unavoidable.
Yes, of
All right,
course.
so
It is open to the public, so.
that is the show.
I linked it. I linked it on the chatty for you, Ryan.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. And yeah, I actually have a
For the
review coming
kids
out next
already.
week. I have
Oh,
a review
cool.
coming out next week.
Yeah,
Be getting-
Asif has a review coming.
Can you say what it is, or
No, I don't think I can I?
You're not allowed to say what it is. I didn't think that was in the.
so keep an
Can I?
eye out for something.
No, it's it's Fast Racing Neo.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I've heard some.
I saw IGN like streaming the actual game. You can say that you're reviewing it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm either allowed to capture 30 minutes of video or stream for 30 minutes, and I haven't decided what to do yet. But yeah, look out for that.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
F-Zero, sort of
It's
successor,
not
I guess.
it's
Homage.
it's not F-Zero, but it's
Okay. So that is the show. Thanks for listening. Go review us on iTunes. I'm not going to keep you too long because Brian has to run. But thank you. And for Asif, I am Steve.
I'm Brian Carr.
We'll see you on Chatty.
Bye.